In the middle of the desert, 40 kilometers from Dubai's skyscrapers and beaches, a colossal runway lies waiting. It's long enough to launch the world's largest aircraft, but most days it sits almost silent. This is Al-Maktum International, the airport that Dubai built, then paused, then quietly began bringing back to life. And if everything goes according to plan, this empty stretch of sand will soon overtake Dubai International, becoming the largest passenger hub the world has ever seen. But this isn't just another construction story. It's a strategy, one that reveals how Dubai thinks about scale, competition, and the future of its entire economy. Because as successful as DXB has been, it's running out of room, and the system that made Dubai a global hub can no longer keep up with the city it created. So why is Dubai moving its airport to the desert, and what does that tell us about the city that built a mega hub and then decided to start over? When Dubai International opened in 1960, it was little more than a sand strip beside the creek, a small outpost on the edge of the Gulf serving propeller aircraft and a few regional routes. But back then, Dubai had no oil wealth to fall back on, so instead its rulers bet on geography. Half the world's population lives within an 8-hour flight of Dubai, and it was that single fact that shaped everything that came next. In the 1980s, Emirates Airline was born, with just 2 borrowed aircraft, and quickly realised it could turn Dubai into the world's layover lounge. Rather than relying on local demand, it built a model around connections, carrying millions of people through the city, not just to it. And it worked. By the mid-2000s, Dubai International had become one of the fastest growing airports on Earth. Aviation wasn't just a side business, it was the economy. Airlines, logistics, and tourism now account for more than a quarter of Dubai's GDP, and the airport handles about 92.3 million passengers a year, more than Heathrow and more than JFK. But this scale came at a cost, and the airport's success created its own limits. It sits right in the middle of the city, boxed in by highways, skyscrapers, and the very neighbourhoods that grew up around it. Every new runway or terminal meant carving into urban space that Dubai could no longer afford to lose. And as the planes got bigger, the margins for error only got smaller. With just 2 closely spaced runways and almost no room to expand, the airport is operating at close to maximum capacity, every day, every hour. Which brings us to the problem. Dubai's global hub had reached the edge of what was physically possible, and the very model that made it rich was starting to hold it back. For years, Dubai tried to solve the problem the same way most cities do, by expanding what it already had. New concourses stretched out like fingers from the terminal, Concourse A for the A380, then B, then C. Each one pushed capacity a little further, buying the time before the next upgrade. At one point, engineers even looked at adding a 3rd runway, but there was simply nowhere to put it. Any real expansion would have meant demolishing entire neighbourhoods, highways, or hotels built right up to the airport fence. Instead, DXB became a masterpiece of optimisation, squeezing more movements out of every square metre. But the numbers tell the story. 2 runways handling roughly 440 movements a year, well over 1,000 per day, and one of the highest intensities in the world. There's simply no slack left in the system, and any closure, even for maintenance, sends delays rippling across the network. So while DXB's design had been stretched to its limit, Dubai's ambitions hadn't. And by the late 2000s, it was clear, the city needed more than an upgrade. It needed a blank slate. So 40 kilometers south of downtown, in a patch of empty desert, Dubai decided to start over. Here, far from the crowded airspace and city limits, planners sketched out a new idea. Not just a replacement for DXB, but an entirely new aviation ecosystem. Al-Maktum International Airport, or Dubai World Central, would be built for the scale of the next century. 5 parallel runways, around 400 terminal gates, and space for more than 250 million passengers a year. That's enough capacity to absorb Emirates, Fly Dubai, and every future expansion Dubai could even imagine. But this wasn't just about aviation. Around the airport, Dubai began planning an entire city, designed to link the airfield directly to the port at Jebel Ali, the free zones, and a new high-speed rail corridor. A logistics hub, a business district, a residential community, all connected by one central idea, that the airport wouldn't just serve the city, it would be the city. Construction began in 2007 with bold renderings and even bolder predictions. The first runway opened in 2010, cargo operations followed, and even a few passenger flights began trickling in. Then the financial crisis hit, oil prices crashed, and the project slowed to a crawl. For years, Al-Maktum sat half-finished, but Dubai never truly abandoned it. Because even as Dubai International continued to grow, the writing was on the wall. The future of the hub economy would depend on more than just another terminal. It would depend on space. So what makes Dubai World Centre different isn't just its size, it's what it connects to. Because this isn't just an airport, it's the anchor of a much larger system. Just 20 kilometers to the west sits Jebel Ali Port, one of the busiest container ports on Earth, handling about 15.5 million TEUs a year. Right beside it, the Jebel Ali Free Zone hosts over 10,700 companies, from logistic giants to manufacturers, all built around one principle: fast, frictionless trade. And the Dubai World Centre Airport sits directly upstream of that ecosystem. Cargo can move from a freighter on the tarmac to a ship at Jebel Ali Port via bonded integrated processes designed for rapid transfer. That's the kind of efficiency that makes global supply chains choose Dubai over everyone else. Then there's the next piece of the puzzle, Etihad Rail, the nationwide freight and passenger network now being expanded to Dubai South. When completed, it will link Dubai World Centre to Abu Dhabi, Sharjah and beyond, turning the new airport into the central interchange of the entire UAE transport grid. And it doesn't stop there. The master plan includes metro extensions, business districts, and even the new headquarters of Emirates and Dubai Aviation City. In other words, Dubai World Centre isn't being built to serve the economy, it's being built to drive it. A complete logistics and financial corridor where air, sea, rail and banking systems converge in one integrated hub. It's the kind of connectivity that no other city in the Gulf and arguably no other city in the world can match. For years, Dubai World Centre was a sleeping project, an idea that Dubai could return to someday. But in 2024, that someday suddenly became now. That spring, Dubai's ruler announced that the construction would restart immediately, with a staggering $35 billion expansion plan to finally bring the Al-Maktum International Airport to life. Within a decade, it's set to replace DXB as the city's main airport. So why now? Because Dubai's head start as the Middle East hub is no longer guaranteed. To the west, Saudi Arabia is investing hundreds of billions of pounds into Riyadh's new King Salman International Airport, designed to handle 185 million passengers a year and become the centrepiece of its Vision 2030 plan. To the north, Doha's Hamad International continues expanding after hosting the 2022 World Cup, which cemented Qatar Airways as a fierce global competitor. And to the northwest, Istanbul's new mega airport has surged to become Europe's busiest and one of the world's largest, though DXB still handles more total passengers overall. In other words, Dubai is no longer the only crossroads in the region. It's part of a race, and one that's as much about branding and influence as it is about runways and gates. Restarting Dubai World Centre now is Dubai's answer. A statement it intends not just to keep up, but to stay ahead, by building the infrastructure its rivals can't yet match, and doing it before anyone else catches up. So Dubai's plan is built around phases, each one designed to move a little more of the system south without ever shutting DXB down. The first wave begins with cargo and maintenance. These operations are already growing at DWC, using its vast open space and easy access to Jebel Ali Port. It's a way to scale up the new site quietly, testing its systems while freeing up room at DXB. Next comes Fly Dubai and regional traffic. By relocating short-haul and low-cost flights, Dubai can begin balancing the load between the two airports. It's a subtle shift, but one that starts to build passenger flow through DWC and attract the surrounding businesses that make the airports thrive. Then comes the headline move, Emirates. Sometime into the 2030s, the airline is expected to transition its entire operations south, along with its new fleet of A350s and 777Xs. The move alone will redefine global air traffic patterns, effectively moving one of the largest airline hubs overnight. When that happens, DXB won't close. Instead, it will be repurposed, a premium point-to-point airport for businesses and short-haul travel, while DWC becomes the intercontinental gateway. It's a rare chance for a city to rebuild its global identity from the ground up without ever switching the lights off. On paper, building a new airport the size of a small city looks extravagant, but in Dubai's case, the math surprisingly works. First, aviation isn't just another sector here, it's the engine of the economy. Airports, airlines and tourism together generate about 27% of Dubai's GDP, and support roughly 1 million jobs across the UAE. Every extra million passengers that pass through the city translates directly into billions of dirhams in spending, investment and trade. So the government isn't simply funding DWC as a vanity project. It's treating it as a return on infrastructure, an investment designed to unlock the next generation of growth. And with DXB running out of capacity, the choice wasn't between spending billions or not spending at all. It was between building up or falling behind. Then there's land value. Around DXB, almost every square metre has already been built out. But around DWC, every kilometre of desert can be turned into new free zones, logistics parks, hotels and housing. By relocating the airport, Dubai effectively opens up two cities for development, one around the new hub and one around the old. And even the airlines stand to gain. Operating out of a purpose-built airfield with faster turnarounds, modern maintenance facilities and unconstrained expansion means higher efficiency and fewer delays. And that's good for Emirates, good for passengers and good for Dubai's bottom line. And in typical Dubai fashion, the project is structured to pay for itself, through real estate, logistics and private investment rather than public debt. Of course, not everyone's convinced, and building an airport this massive in one of the hottest, driest parts of the planet comes with obvious challenges. Cooling, energy use and carbon footprint all scale with size. And while Dubai has pledged to make DWC one of the world's most sustainable airports, even the most efficient terminals still consume enormous resources. Then there's the question of demand. Air travel growth slowed sharply after the pandemic, and while long-term forecasts remain optimistic, the world's biggest hubs are already competing for the same connecting passengers. If Riyadh, Doha or Istanbul capture even a fraction of that traffic, Dubai's long-term projections start to look less certain. There's also a risk in timing. Megaprojects on this scale are prone to cost overruns and delays, and DWC has already been paused once before. The difference this time is Dubai's broader economy depends on it. If global travel patterns shift towards more regional or low-carbon flying, the return on such an enormous investment could take decades to materialise. Even politically, there are risks. Dubai's aviation dominance has long relied on open skies and favourable agreements with Western markets. Any tightening of those policies or new environmental taxes could change the equation overnight. Still, the city has built its brand on turning risk into momentum. It's done it with tourism, with real estate, with finance, and now it's trying to do it again, and at a scale that no one else would dare attempt. If you stand at the edge of the desert today, you can already see it taking shape, the runways stretching to the horizon, the control tower rising from the sand, and the faint grid of roads that will one day be a city. When it's finished, Al-Maktum International could handle 250 million passengers a year, more than any airport on Earth. But the real ambition isn't just to move people faster. It's to secure Dubai's place in the world long after oil, long after trade routes shift, and long after the city that built DXB runs out of space. Because this isn't just an airport relocation, it's a generational handover from one economic model to the next. From a city that built a hub inside its limits, to a city that's now expanding its limits around the hub. DWC is a statement that even after reaching the top of global aviation, Dubai still isn't finished building. And when that future starts running out of runway, the answer, at least here, is simple. You build another one.